rain came down like needles on the cracked pavement of Camp Wallace, each drop slicing through the early morning silence like a challenge. Recruits shuffled into formation, boots slapping wet concrete, eyes bleary with sleep, minds heavy with doubt. The smell of damp earth mixed with engine oil and fresh sweat. Among them stood Elena Ruiz, 19, spine straight, eyes locked ahead, uniform soaked but her jaw set like stone. She didn't belong here. At least, that's what everyone whispered. She's just here for the uniform selfies. One of the older recruits had muttered the night before. She'll quit before the month's over. Another had snickered. They weren't subtle. They didn't try to be. And they certainly didn't care that Elena could hear every word. She didn't respond. Not because she didn't want to, but because she couldn't waste energy. Every breath, every movement was calculated, controlled. That's how you survived in a place that felt designed to break you. Not with yelling or beatdowns, but with doubt, with isolation, with invisible lines drawn around who you were supposed to be. Elena didn't fit in any of them. Her father had. Gunnery Sergeant Marcos Ruiz had walked the same concrete 2 decades ago. Different generation, same burden. He'd died overseas in what the news politely called a mechanical failure. Elena was 16 when the folded flag landed in her lap, when the world stopped pretending to be fair. She didn't cry then. She didn't cry at all for months. But when she enlisted on her 18th birthday, she placed that folded flag in her footlocker like armor. "Move it, Ruiz," barked Staff Sergeant Callahan, snapping her back to the present. She moved. They ran drills in the storm, push-ups in puddles, sprints through sludge. Every minute stretched like wire pulled tight. Elena kept pace, her boots like anchors, but her lungs held steady. She didn't flinch when mud splattered her face or when a recruit accidentally bumped her into the dirt. She simply got up, that night, soaked to the bone and shivering on her bunk. She listened. "You hear about Ruiz?" That voice belonged to Carter, a square-jawed Missouri boy who looked like he'd been born on a football field. "Yeah," Mendez replied, laughter in his throat. "Heard she shot a 61 on the Prequel range. Can't hit the broadside of barn. She should have stayed home and played dress-up. Bet her daddy pulled strings to get her here." The laughter spread like a fire star for oxygen. Elena lay motionless, eyes open to the bunk slats above, her fingers curled into fists under the blanket. She didn't have the luxury of anger. Not here. Not yet. She got up earlier than everyone else the next morning. 0400. Alone in the dark, she jogged the perimeter track under floodlights, her breath forming small clouds in the cold air. Every step was a whisper. Asterisk, earn it. Earn it. Earn it. Asterisk. By the time the others rose, Elena had already cleaned the latrines, polished her boots to a mirror shine, and memorized the day's drill sequence. She never boasted, never talked back, never gave them a reason to see her beyond their assumptions. But quietly, brick by brick, she built herself. Then came range week. Elena stood at the edge of the firing line, rifle in hand. She checked the chamber, her fingers slow, deliberate. Targets weighted down range, silhouettes in the dust, hearts of paper. Around her, recruits shuffled, smirked, whispered. Carter tapped his magazine like a drummer. Mendez stretched theatrically, eyes glancing at her with smug amusement. She knew the rumors, knew they'd watched her shoot low during drills. What they didn't know was that she had done it on purpose, hidden her aim, miscalculated shots. Let them think she was just another soft recruit riding her father's shadow, because her real shot came now. Fire when ready. The range master barked. The first round exploded from her rifle like a declaration. Then another, and another. Rhythm, control, breathing between beats. Inhale, squeeze, exhale. She wasn't shooting paper. She was releasing something. Every insult, every doubt, every damn time someone looked at her and saw a little girl with no right to be here. When the last round fired, she lowered her weapon and stepped back. Calm, focused. Scores came out an hour later. "Who the hell is Ruiz?" Carter asked, frowning at the sheet posted outside the barracks. She hit 248 out of 250. Mendez blinked. "That's..." Top score, someone muttered behind them. By a mile. They turned. Elena stood in her pressed uniform, face unreadable. You sandbagged, Carter said, voice tight with something dangerously close to respect. You played us. She didn't reply. Didn't need to. She just walked past them, boots echoing on the concrete. Each step was quieter than the one before, but it carried weight now. Recognition, not from rank or legacy, but from something harder to earn. That night, Carter sat on his bunk, flipping through the day's schedule. He glanced over at Elena's bed. Empty. She was out there again, running the track in the dark. He watched through the window. Something changed in his face. He didn't laugh anymore. Not tonight. Not after what he saw her do. And definitely not after realizing she wasn't here to prove anything to them. She was here to keep a promise. And she was just getting started. Lightning cracked across the early morning sky, illuminating the soaked grounds of Camp Wallace in bursts of harsh white. Mud clung to every boot print like a challenge, thick and heavy. The firing range looked more like a battlefield than a training field. Wind howled between the trees. A miserable day to train. A perfect day to prove something. Elena stood at the edge of the range, shoulders squared, eyes locked on the distant silhouette targets. Her rifle was cradled in her arms like something sacred, not a tool, but a piece of memory. She rolled her shoulders once, then twice. She didn't shiver, even though the rain soaked her uniform straight through. Water streamed down her cheek, like a tear she refused to shed. Ruiz! Callahan barked from the tower behind her, his voice rough over the PA. You're up? Don't embarrass yourself. Elena didn't respond. She stepped forward without hesitation. Behind her, Carter leaned against the wall of the shelter with crossed arms, watching like he was trying to make sense of something he didn't want to admit. Mendez, beside him, muttered, She's gonna choke. Too much pressure. But Elena didn't hear them. Her world had narrowed to the target and the breath in her lungs. She dropped to prone, lined up the shot, and remembered the words her father used to whisper during long nights at the range. Asterisk, breathe like you mean to live. Fire like it's the last thing you'll ever do. Asterisk. Pop, pop, pop. 12 rounds. 12 hits. 1 center mass. 1 clean through the center ring. Rain splattered the dirt. Her grouping was tight, unforgiving, better than most. Maybe better than anyone that day. The range went silent. Next, Callahan called, his tone unreadable. Elena didn't look back. She stood, slung her rifle over her shoulder, and walked past Carter without breaking stride. He didn't say a word, but he followed her with his eyes until she disappeared inside the barracks. That evening, as the others peeled off their wet clothes and compared scores, Elena sat alone on the end of her bunk, carefully drying her weapon piece by piece. Her movements were precise, ritualistic, like penance. Her fingers trembled slightly, not from cold, but from restraint. She could feel the shift in the room. They were beginning to notice. You think she's for real? Mendez asked Carter quietly. Carter shrugged. I think she ain't here to make friends. In truth, he'd been watching her since the first week. How she never talked unless spoken to. How she ran laps at night. How she taped up her hands without complaint and climbed the tower wall again after falling twice. The same wall some recruits had quietly skipped. Something about her got under his skin, but not in the way he expected. That night, the storm passed. The sky cleared just enough to let a pale moon cast shadows across the camp. Elena, now in her sweat-soaked PT gear, slipped out of the barracks. She ran the perimeter in silence, not to be seen, not to impress, to exorcise the noise. Each footfall hit the pavement like a drumbeat. Asterisk, earn it. Earn it. Earn it. Asterisk. She remembered the look on her mother's face when she told her she was enlisting. A long silence. Not anger. Not disappointment. Just worry carved deep into her features like weathered stone. You don't have to become him, her mother had said, voice low. I'm not trying to, Elena had answered. I'm trying to understand what made him. The next morning, obstacle drills resumed before sunrise. The wall climb, the rope ladder, the sandbag carry, each one designed to strip away pride and leave only grit. Elena pushed through each station with quiet precision. She didn't beat anyone's time, but she never faltered. Not once. At the final station, the rope climb, a few recruits had gathered to watch her. Carter stood with his arms folded. Mendez leaned on the post, chewing gum. She grabbed the rope, arms tense, legs steady. Her boots gripped the wet fiber as she pulled herself up, foot by foot. Near the top, the rope slipped beneath her, and she dangled for a second, twisted sideways in the air. A few gasps, one or two laughs, but she didn't panic. She closed her eyes, found her breath, and resumed climbing. At the top, she slapped the bell with a firm smack. It echoed down through the trees. Not loud, but undeniable. When she landed, Carter stepped forward. "You're stubborn as hell," he said, not mockingly. Elena stared at him. "You say that like it's an insult." Carter smirked, just slightly. Mendez let out a low whistle. "I wouldn't bet against her in a real fight." The next phase of training came faster than expected. Advanced tactical simulation. Full gear, real terrain, high stakes. This wasn't about shooting cardboard anymore. It was about decisions, leadership, mental toughness, the kind of pressure that made people crack. The briefing was simple. Squad leaders would be chosen based on range scores, leadership evaluations, and endurance trials. Elena had passed all of them, quietly, steadily. Her name was on the short list. Carter's too. When the announcement came, Callahan's voice filled the barracks. "Squad A. Ruiz, squad leader." Silence. Not laughter. Not outrage. Just quiet. Elena stood slowly. No smile. No shock. Just the weight of knowing she was exactly where she intended to be. As she gathered her gear, Carter caught her eye. "Guess now we'll see if you can lead as well as you shoot." Elena adjusted the strap on her rifle. "I guess we will." And for the first time, neither of them looked away. The mock village was built to look like a war zone. Burned-out trucks, shattered windows, wire fences tangled with fake IEDs. Smoke machines hissed softly from hidden vents, and loudspeakers blared the chaos of a combat zone. Gunfire, shouting, helicopters that weren't there. But the fear it triggered was real. Elena crouched behind a barricade of sandbags, scanning the street through her cracked goggles. Mud caked her elbows. Sweat dripped from her jawline. Her hands clenched around her M4 rifle. But it wasn't the weight of the weapon that pressed hardest. It was the pressure of every pair of eyes behind her. "Team Bravo, move on my signal," she whispered into the comms. "Left flank sweep. Watch the corners. Mendez, your rear guard." A beat of static. "Copy," came Carter's voice. Steady but low. Focus. They moved like shadows. Each step calculated. Elena led from the front. Not because she wanted to be the hero, but because she refused to ask anything she wouldn't do herself. The air stung with the smell of sulfur and wet plywood. Every sound felt amplified. Every movement watched. A simulated grenade went off 2 blocks ahead. Screams from the speakers. Smoke rolled in. Mendez flinched. "It's fake," Elena said quickly, hand on his shoulder. "Breathe through it." He nodded, but she saw it in his eyes. He'd cracked a little. They reached a 2-story building. Elena raised her fist. "Halt!" The team knelt behind her. Inside, targets waited. Some civilian, some hostile. Split-second decisions. Consequences, even if only simulated. Elena took a breath and entered first. The hallway was narrow, lined with peeling wallpaper and overturned furniture. The first room on the left had a dummy hostage tied to a chair. Elena moved on without hesitation. Second door. Paper target popped up with raised rifle. Pop, pop, pop. 3 shots. 2 to the chest, 1 to the head. Clean. Carter moved in behind her, covering angles. They cleared each room with methodical precision. But upstairs, something went wrong. A loud bang. Carter slipped on wet plywood. His ankle twisted hard, and he collapsed with a grunt. "Carter's down." Elena called. "Mendez, get to my position now." She dragged Carter into cover behind a broken sofa. As Mendez arrived, wide-eyed, Carter gritted his teeth. pain written across his face. "It's just twisted," he muttered. "You can't walk on that," she said. "Mendez, you'll carry his gear. Carter, you stay low and move when I tell you. No heroics." "I'm slowing you down," he growled, frustrated. "You're part of this team," she replied. "We all make it or none of us do." Outside, the scenario timer ticked down. They had 5 minutes left to reach the final checkpoint and extract a VIP. Mendez looked panicked. "We're not going to make it." Elena's voice was steel. "Then we run." She lifted Carter onto his feet, supported his weight with her shoulder, and started moving. Every step was a fight against time and terrain. But she didn't stop. She didn't let him fall. The team followed, close and silent. At the last corner, another target popped up, civilian this time. Mendez almost fired. Elena threw her hand out just in time. "Don't shoot," she snapped. "Blue shirt. No weapon." Mendez froze, trembling. "Clear your head," she told him. "You're not here to guess. You're here to know." He nodded slowly, ashamed. They reached the checkpoint with seconds to spare. The siren blared. Simulation over. Silence returned. No gunfire. No smoke. Elena let go of Carter and collapsed onto the gravel beside him, chest heaving. "That was insane," he muttered, lying on his back. "I owe you." "No," she said, staring up at the artificial sky. "You don't." The evaluators approached. One by one, they checked boxes, whispered to each other. Then Callahan stepped forward. "Ruiz," he said, "out of 46 squads, only 3 completed the full scenario. Yours was the only one to do it without civilian casualties." The others turned to look at her. "Nice work," he added. "Real nice." Later that evening, the barracks felt different. No jokes. No whispers. Just quiet nods. Respect that didn't have to be spoken. Carter limped to her bunk, carrying a small folded paper. "This came from HQ," he said, handing it over. She opened it. A notice. Recommendation for officer candidate school, pending approval. She stared at it for a long time. "You earned that," Carter said. "Every step." "I'm not sure that's what I came here for." "Then why are you here?" he asked. She looked at him. "To finish what my father started." That night, she sat outside alone, the cool air wrapping around her. She held the folded letter in one hand, her father's dog tags in the other. The moon was full and quiet. In the distance, she could hear another group running night drills. Yelling, orders, footsteps pounding pavement. But around her, stillness. She was no longer a question mark in the eyes of the others. No longer a shadow. She had led. She had bled. She had delivered. Yet something in her still felt unfinished. A promise not yet fulfilled. A voice that still echoed every time her boots hit the ground. Asterisk, earn it. Earn it. Asterisk. She would. And tomorrow, she'd start again. A cold wind swept across the open field as the sun climbed over the horizon, burning the fog from the grass. A row of targets stood like silent challengers. 50 meters out, 20 steel silhouettes lined shoulder to shoulder. This wasn't another simulation. This was the real test. The final trial. No theatrics. No do-overs. Just a rifle, a heartbeat, and truth. Elena stood at the firing line, boots planted, hands still. Her squad watched from behind the barricade. Carter sat on the edge of a medical truck, his ankle wrapped, his arms crossed tight over his chest. Mendez stood beside him, silent. They'd all trained for this. But only Elena had her name on the roster today. She'd earned that place with grit, precision, and a refusal to break, even when everything and everyone pushed her to. Beside her, Master Sergeant Holt read aloud from the clipboard, targets at increasing difficulty. Timed sequence. You miss more than 2, you're done. Hit every shot, and you qualify for Special Forces sniper track. Elena didn't flinch. You have 60 seconds. Load and ready. She slid the bolt forward, chambered the round, raised a rifle, then hold at it quietly. You're the only female to reach this stage in 5 years. She blinked once, noted it, filed it away like everything else they'd use to measure her. Then let it go. Begin. The first target dropped before the crack echoed. Then the second, third, the rhythm pulsed like a song she'd rehearsed 1,000 times. Each breath synced with the trigger, each pull exact. She didn't aim at paper. She aimed at doubt memory, and every sideways glance that ever told her she didn't belong. Halfway through, wind gusted left. She adjusted instinctively, corrected for drift. 9 more. 8. 7. From the sidelines, Carter stood now, hand gripping the edge of the truck. His jaw clenched with every shot. Mendez whispered under his breath, "She's gonna do it." For a left. One high shot grazed the edge, sparking off the metal. Hope marked something on the sheet. Elena didn't react. She adjusted grip, slowed her breathing. 3, 2, 1. Silence. Then Hope walked down range. His boots left sharp prints in the damp earth. Everyone held their breath. When he returned, he held up a target sheet. All hits but one. Total score, 99 out of 100. A murmur swept through the crowd. Then applause. But Elena didn't smile. She simply lowered the rifle and stood at ease. Later that evening, the sun dipped low, spilling amber light across the training grounds. The base commander shook her hand beneath the flagpole. A small crowd had gathered. Officers, instructors, and recruits who once couldn't remember her name. Now they couldn't stop saying it. "You've been recommended for OCS and placed on the sniper development track," the commander said, voice gruff but proud. "You've got 3 days to report to Pendleton. After that, you start over, but higher." Elena nodded, but her eyes drifted to the flag above. It snapped in the wind, full and defiant. As the crowd dispersed, Carter walked up, still limping slightly. "So, sniper school," he said. "Never thought I'd say this, but hell, you actually earned it." She looked at him. "You thought I wouldn't?" He shrugged. "I thought you were chasing your father's ghost. But now, I think maybe you were trying to outrun it." Her gaze softened. "Maybe both." He held out a folded slip of paper. "I made you something." She opened it. A sketch, rough but careful. Her, firing prone. Calm, sharp-eyed. Beneath it, 3 words she didn't miss. She folded it and slid it into her jacket pocket. "Thank you." Carter hesitated. "When you get there, don't forget who you are." "I won't," she said, "because I finally know." That night, the barracks were quiet. Most were asleep. Elena sat on her bunk, backpack at her feet, gear packed and ready. Across from her, Mendez was writing something, but he looked up. "You think they'll be tougher at Pendleton?" "Definitely," she said. He smiled faintly. "You'll still break them." She didn't reply, just tied her boots tight, lace at the top. Outside, the air smelled like pine and metal. She stepped into the darkness, her footsteps quiet. At the edge of the compound stood the wall, the same one she'd failed her first week. Rain had made it slick again, just like then. She walked to it slowly, stared up, then wordlessly she climbed. No audience, no stopwatch, just her, hand over hand, grip after grip, until she reached the top. She stood there a moment, wind in her face. She closed her eyes, let carry away what she didn't need anymore. When she came down, the camp lights behind her flickered in the wind. Morning would come soon. Orders would follow. But tonight, she wasn't chasing her father's memory. She was building her own.